When Michael's mother looked me dead in the eye and said, "People like you should be grateful to be invited inside this house," I felt something inside me crack, not from shame, but from clarity. My name is Yvonne Carlyle, and that was the moment I realized I wasn't being welcomed into a family. I was being sized up like a tool, a cover, a lie they could use. I smiled that night, pretending her words didn't burn. But as I held the champagne glass and heard them whisper about the poor little freelance girl, I made a silent promise to myself. If they thought I was naive, they had no idea who they'd just let in. The drive to Tiburon felt shorter than it should have. The sun hung low over the bay, melting into a haze of gold and steel as I crossed the bridge. By the time I reached the winding road that led to Michael's family estate, my heartbeat had already begun to match the rhythm of the engine, steady, but edged with something sharp. The house appeared like a glass fortress, perched on the hillside, polished to perfection. When the door opened, a middle-aged maid eyed me carefully before asking if I was making a delivery. I smiled, said no, and stepped inside. The scent of roses and old money filled the air. Eleanor Whitford was waiting in the foyer. Her posture could have cut marble. Her smile was something colder than politeness. She looked me over, from my plain navy dress to the worn leather of my shoes, and said in a tone wrapped in silk, "You chose comfort over impression. Brave." I thanked her, though we both knew it wasn't a compliment. Dinner began like a symphony of manners, every question phrased as an invitation and delivered like a test. Charlotte, Michael's sister, leaned forward with a half smile. "Stanford? Interesting. So you didn't actually finish?" Michael chuckled softly, the kind of laugh meant to smooth the edges, but it cut deeper than silence. Halfway through the meal, a server passed behind me, addressing Eleanor as Madam Chairman. The name hit like static. Whitford Capital. The same fund I'd once flagged for suspicious transfers. By the time I left, the bay was drenched in light, the bridge glowing behind me. My little experiment had shifted into something else entirely. I wasn't just testing them anymore. Somewhere between their laughter and Michael's silence, I had stumbled straight into the echo of an old wound, one my father had never healed from. The second dinner was supposed to be better. I told myself the first one might have just been a misunderstanding, a clash of personalities, maybe a bit of arrogance polished into habit, but from the second I stepped through their front door again, I knew I'd been naive. The house felt colder this time, the kind of cold that doesn't come from temperature, but from people who already decided who you are before you even sit down. Eleanor Whitford commanded the room effortlessly. Her voice never rose, yet every word carried weight. She smiled as she asked what I did for work, the sort of question that sounds innocent but lands like a knife. I told her I worked independently, consulting when needed. She tilted her head and let out that soft laugh, the one that could make an insult sound like a compliment. "So you must have plenty of free time," she said. "Women today seem to prefer flexibility over stability." Charlotte, Michael's sister, joined in with a grin sharp enough to draw blood. "My brother needs someone who helps him grow, not just someone who brings him coffee." The table laughed. Michael didn't. He poured me another glass of wine, the gesture so polite it made his silence sting more. I said little. I just watched, studied, memorized their faces, the smug curve of Charlotte's smile, the way Eleanor's eyes softened every time she mentioned the word legacy. They were the kind of people who believed kindness was a luxury they didn't owe anyone beneath them. When Eleanor asked if I had family, I told her my father once lost everything after a fund manipulated his stock portfolio. I didn't name the fund, but her gaze flickered, just for a moment, before she hid it behind another sip of wine. By dessert, when the help cleared the table, Eleanor turned to Michael. "Claudia Remington will be back in California next week. Arrange lunch. I think she still cares about you." I heard every word. I smiled like I hadn't. Later, I walked past the library, meaning to leave quietly, but their voices stopped me. I stayed in the shadow of the doorway. Eleanor's tone was calm, practiced. "Michael needs to marry Claudia," she said. "The merger between her family's bank and our fund depends on it." "And the other girl?" Charlotte asked. "A wall," Eleanor replied. "Once the deal is done, we'll take it down." My throat burned. I didn't move. I just stared at their reflections in the glass. Two women discussing my life like it was an investment strategy. Then something above them caught my eye. A framed photograph of Eleanor shaking my father's hand at the Whitford Capital launch, 15 years ago. The smile on his face looked so full of promise. The same day his future began to collapse. The memory hit like ice water. My hands trembled, but my face didn't. When I finally walked out, the night air bit into my skin, and I realized this wasn't just a dinner anymore. It was history repeating itself. And this time, I was standing where my father once had, on the edge of their empire, one wrong move away from being destroyed. 3 days later, another invitation arrived. Handwritten, gilded edges, the kind that screams status. Eleanor wanted to host a proper dinner. She said, to make amends for the awkwardness before. I already knew it wasn't an apology. It was a setup. When I arrived, the house was brighter than ever, full of guests in silk and tailored suits. Photographers drifted near the fireplace like vultures disguised as professionals. Eleanor approached with a smile that was too smooth to be genuine. "Let's start fresh," she said, and kissed my cheek like we were old friends. The dinner unfolded like a play everyone knew by heart except me. The wine flowed, laughter rehearsed, conversation orchestrated. Then, halfway through, Eleanor rose with her glass raised high. "Michael, darling, I believe you have something to share." He froze. For a split second, I saw panic cross his face, then obedience. He stood, came around the table, and suddenly knelt before me. The room gasped, camera flashes exploding like fireworks. A diamond ring glittered under the chandelier. "Yvonne, will you marry me?" Applause erupted. I heard none of it. I just saw Eleanor's satisfied smile. The same expression she probably wore every time she closed a successful deal. This wasn't love. It was a marketing campaign. The message was clear. Whitford Capital was stable, moral, family-oriented. I nodded, my lips forming the words they wanted. Yes, inside. Though, something hardened. If they wanted a performance, I'd give them a show they'd never forget. That night, when I got home, a text waited on my phone. "He's not honest. Claudia never left." Attached was a photo, Michael holding Claudia's hand at a Palm Springs party. The two of them laughing under fairy lights. Beneath it, one final line. "Don't let them use you like they used your father. Signed, Harold Green." The name twisted something deep inside me. Harold, the senior advisor Eleanor had once fired for refusing to falsify reports. My pulse pounded as I opened my laptop and pulled up old archives. Hidden in my files were the reports from the time I'd investigated Whitford Capital. Documents, numbers, patterns that now looked painfully familiar. The screen's glow lit the room as I whispered to myself, "Carlisle versus Whitford." Cycle restarted. This was no longer about pride, or even Michael. This was about reclaiming what my father lost, not his money, but the truth that died with it. News of our engagement spread faster than wildfire. Within 24 hours, every business page and social feed carried the same headline: Whitford Capital strengthens public trust through next-generation leadership. Michael Whitford and fiancé Yvonne Carlisle. The new symbol of integrity. Integrity? The irony almost made me laugh out loud. 3 days later, Eleanor sent me an email full of grace and venom, disguised as gratitude. She thanked me for representing the family with such composure, attaching a proposal for joint community initiatives under the Whitford name. Inside was a document authorizing the fund to use my name, my likeness, and my professional title for marketing partnerships. I didn't sign it. I printed it, folded it twice, and locked it in my safe. That evening, Michael showed up at my apartment, holding roses like a peace offering. He smiled softly, but I could tell his eyes were running from something. He asked if I was happy, his voice tender, almost boyish. I told him I was, then asked how it felt to propose under his mother's direction. His face twitched, and he said she hadn't forced him. I told him I didn't think she forced him. I knew she had. He looked down, gripping my hand, his silence louder than confession. After he left, my phone lit up. Check account 427. No sender. My pulse quickened. I logged into the system of a client firm my company was auditing, one of Whitford Capital's subsidiaries. My fingers trembled as I scrolled. There it was. A series of transfers moving funds through a fake nonprofit, Whitford Family Foundation, before looping back into a personal account belonging to Claudia Remington. The realization hit me like a punch. Claudia wasn't just an ex. She was a partner in their crime. I contacted Harold Green, the man who'd signed that anonymous message. We met at a coffee shop near the Embarcadero. Time had carved deeper lines into his face, but his eyes still burned with purpose. He said he'd once believed Whitford stood for excellence, until they cost him his career. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts, transaction logs, signatures, mine among them. They're using your name to legitimize transfers, he said quietly. I looked down at the pages. The signature was perfect, identical to mine. My throat tightened. I asked why he was helping me. Harold exhaled, long and heavy. Because your father once stood up for the truth, and he lost everything for it. He said, I didn't. Not then. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about me. I wasn't fighting for my pride or even my future. I was finishing the battle my father never got to win. For nights, I barely slept. My apartment became a war room, papers covering the floor, coffee going cold beside my laptop, the soft hum of my printer looping like a heartbeat. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became. Whitford Capital was collapsing from within, drowning in debt. The supposed merger with the Remington Bank was nothing but a laundering operation to move illicit funds before bankruptcy exposed them. Every report I read carried my father's shadow. I could almost hear him telling me, watch the numbers. The lies are always buried in the math. I knew I couldn't act recklessly. If I accused them outright, they'd bury me in lawsuits and NDA clauses. I needed precision, evidence that spoke for itself, public enough that no one could silence it. Then I found it. A trail of charity donations, all time-stamped on the same dates Michael and Claudia were photographed attending Palm Springs conferences. The same flights, the same hotels, the same nights money vanished into offshore accounts. It was a perfect choreography of deceit. I documented everything and called my friend Lydia Tran, a financial journalist I trusted more than anyone. I told her I had a story, one that could shake the Bay Area investment world to its core. She paused for a long moment, then said she'd bring her recorder. All she needed, she told me, was my word that I was ready. A few days later, Harold met me again in Yerba Buena Gardens. He handed me a small black USB. Inside was the full accounting system backup, every line of evidence. Be careful, he warned. Eleanor isn't stupid. The quieter you stay, the more mistakes she'll make. I asked him what he wanted in return. His smile was tired, but kind. To watch them fall, he said. Not for revenge, but for balance. I closed my hand around the USB, feeling its weight like a promise. Then I told him my plan. They wanted a grand engagement gala at the Fairmont. Fine. We'd give them a gala they'd never forget. The night they celebrated themselves would become the night they unraveled. Later that evening, Michael appeared at my door again, grinning nervously. His mother wanted the event at the Fairmont, he said proudly. The biggest social event of the year. I looked into his eyes and told him I'd wear black. He laughed, not understanding. But I knew. Black wasn't mourning. It was justice. After meeting Harold, I learned to wear patience like armor. I became the perfect fiancé. Quiet, compliant, exactly what Eleanor Whitford wanted. I smiled on cue, nodded when spoken to, and let her believe obedience meant defeat. That's better, she said one afternoon. My future daughter-in-law should know when to stay quiet. I smiled. I learned from the best. She laughed, never realizing the insult. Weeks before the gala, I appeared beside Michael in glossy features for West Coast Financial Life. He held my hand for the camera, looking adoring. But the second the lights dimmed, his touch vanished. Love had become another prop. One night, while he slept, his phone buzzed. A message glowed from Claudia Remington. Your mother confirmed the merger. I'll be at the Fairmont. A ring emoji followed, so she'd be there. The illusion complete. I sent the screenshot to Lydia. Bring the cameras. The next day, Charlotte invited me to try on wedding gowns, surrounded by mirrors and silk. She smirked. Do you really think my brother loves you? I adjusted the fabric. He loves what his mother tells him to. She laughed. Clever women don't last in this family. Outside. I caught her whispering into her phone. She knows. Move faster. Perfect. Panic made people sloppy. 3 days before the gala, an email from a former colleague arrived. Your firm is being reviewed for ties to Whitford Capital. Eleanor's first strike, trying to ruin me before I exposed her. I called Harold. They think they're lighting a fire. I said, then let them. He answered, you're holding the gasoline. The next morning, I walked into Whitford Capital and handed Eleanor an envelope. I've signed everything for the gala. I told her, good choice. She purred. Wise women know when to stop. I smiled. Wise women know when to start. Inside wasn't a contract. It was proof of their forgery. My fake signature marked in red. The real evidence was already with the FBI. The day before the gala, Eleanor gifted me a diamond necklace. Whitford Honor, she called it. I fastened it around my neck. Thank you, I said. I'll wear it, so everyone can see what Whitford Honor really means. That night, I visited Michael. Do you have anything to say before it all ends? I asked. He frowned. Ends? Our story, I said. He swore he loved me. I told him love built on lies always collapses, like bad stock. He didn't understand. He never did. Driving home, a black SUV tailed me. In the mirror, I saw Eleanor's bodyguard. I texted Harold. They're watching. He replied, good. Fear makes them sloppy. 2 nights later, the Fairmont glittered like a crown. Lydia's message flashed on my phone. Cameras ready. Eleanor thought she was walking into glory. I knew she was walking straight into judgment. The Fairmont glowed under 1,000 lights, violins floating above the hum of wealth and champagne. I stood before the mirror, black satin hugging my frame, my father's old watch cold against my skin. Outside, the people I was about to expose toasted to their own brilliance. I entered the ballroom to the sound of applause. Eleanor swept toward me, radiant and smug. You look stunning, she said. I smiled. It's a night no one will forget. Reporters closed in. Lydia's voice whispered through my earpiece. Cameras ready. On your signal. Eleanor took the stage, her voice dripping with pride. When she offered me the microphone, I stepped up and let silence hold the room. A year ago, I warned a client not to falsify transfers. I never expected to meet them again. At my own engagement party, the screen behind me flickered to life. Offshore accounts, forged signatures, Claudia and Michael in Palm Springs. Eleanor's voice echoed. End it once the deal's done. Chaos followed. Michael fell to his knees. Eleanor shouted denial, and the FBI entered. I removed the Whitford necklace and placed it in her hand. You called this honor. I said, I'm just returning it, at its true value. By morning, every major outlet carried the same headline. Whitford Capital under federal investigation after financial forgery exposed at engagement gala. The footage spread like wildfire. Screens replaying my words. The documents. The video of Eleanor's voice echoing through the ballroom. Eleanor called a press conference, claiming I had fabricated everything out of spite. But the data, the federal seals, and Harold's testimony had already gone national. Charlotte deleted every trace of her online presence. Claudia was suspended from the Remington Bank pending criminal review. Michael faced indictment for document falsification, his polished reputation disintegrating overnight. And Eleanor, queen of her own empire, was stripped of her chairmanship before noon. Reporters crowded outside my apartment, begging for a statement. I gave none. On my social media, I posted a single sentence. Truth doesn't need to shout. It only needs to survive long enough to be seen. Later, Harold visited. He looked tired but lighter somehow. You did what most people are too afraid to do, he said. Justice doesn't always need a prison, just light. I told him I didn't want them destroyed, only revealed. Then I packed my life into boxes, sold my shares, and left San Francisco behind. No anger, no vengeance, just the quiet ending of a 15-year lie. I live now in Carmel by the Sea, a quiet town where the Pacific hums against the shore and the mornings arrive wrapped in mist. No one here knows I was once the center of California's biggest financial scandal. To them, I'm just another woman walking barefoot along the cold sand, watching the tide erase what it doesn't need to keep. I run a small workshop called Empower Ledger, teaching women how to read financial reports, protect what's theirs, and recognize when someone's trying to buy their silence with charm. It's peaceful work, nothing loud, but deeply alive. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Michael. "I've lost everything. I'm sorry." I deleted it without hesitation. No anger, no satisfaction, just quiet release. The sun was setting, the ocean gilded in gold. I bent down and picked up a smooth round stone, its surface catching the light. Naivety isn't weakness, I thought. It's the shell that protects truth until it's ready to bloom. I slipped the stone into my pocket and walked on. The rhythm of the waves steady behind me, like breathing. I had crossed through deceit, through fear, and finally, back to myself.